Previously on the Beam Chronicles.
Tyler Alfred Foon, mass murderer, including a kid. He slowly looked me up and down.
Right. If you're any indication, love, I think I'm gonna like it here.
Oh, gross.
I think the water he shoots has been absorbed into his body before he shoots it. And once it's gone, he needs to reabsorb it before he can use it again.
So he has limited ammo. Maybe Foon is supposed to be alive.
But for what earthly reason?
Let him raisin in the dungeon for a spell until he can't take it anymore, and put him in Ava, and let his power work for us.
Intriguing proposition, Charlie.
Howie, I really don't think this is such a good idea.
Suppose I made a friend.
Oh god, Big Purple.
I have punched the blue one in the head for you. Do you want me to put him back in here?
This gun is based off of the collapse instrumentation. The monstrously amplified sound is then fired upon the object and...
It shattered to pieces.
This asshole basically left me an entire roadmap to his system without covering any of his tracks. He's practically broadcasting it.
If the fly stuck his head up for an instant of air, we would have heard about it, but he remained in the shadows. He remained underground.
The failsafe is one of those things that only I may know all of the details of. It has limited, specific uses, and I cannot guarantee its continued success. I advise against relying on it as a solution in the future.
Howard Prophet and the Equalizers of Beam did not take the love I had for my father away from me. My father accomplished that feat on his own. I hate him. My hatred consumes my every desire.
These are the Beam Chronicles, with your host, MJ Dooney. Book 1, Initiation, Chapter 20, Cidney Kovorski.
When Jackson was dead, all of us were assigned to grief counselors in the psychiatrics department. And for the most part, these counselors went largely ignored. Yet for some strange reason, I thought I might try talking to one about Jackson's death. It was a mistake. The man whom I talked to was essentially too afraid of my appearance to actually help. Even so, the meager bit of advice he did offer to me seemed largely false. There are 5 stages of grief, I was told: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, in that order from start to finish. Perhaps it was something about my unique biology, but this was far from the course my brain took. In a sense, I did go through all of these so-called stages, but I did so simultaneously. I was angry and depressed and in denial all at once, and which emotion dominated my thinking depended purely on the day. I found it a very challenging proposition to believe that after any given amount of time, I would somehow grow to accept Jackson's death. Conveniently and joyously, I did not have to venture down that unknown path to see if acceptance was in fact somewhere at the end, thanks to Howard Prophet's failsafe. However, Jackson was my brother, and when I lost my sister, I had spent 6 months completely unoccupied by anything except my bargaining and denying my depression and anger. I still was yet to accept it.
Cidney?
Murphy noticed me looking into the lockup that used to be mine, now completely vacant.
One more down the row, you know?
Murphy, please. I am having a sentimental moment. This is my old home. He rustled his mustache. It was on some urgent, time-sensitive matter that he had requested my presence in the dungeon. Perhaps I was being rude for holding him up still. A bit of nostalgia. Why is there not a new prisoner in my old cell? I have not been in it for over 4 months, and yet it is still unoccupied. I asked because it concerned me. In a way, I felt as though the cell was uninhabited because eventually I would inhabit it again. Despite my time of diligent service, despite the lasting friendships I had made, I knew that the Tanaka factor was in the back of Howard Prophet's mind with all agents of Ava. Surely there was no point in refilling the cell I had vacated if I were to lose control and wind up back within it anyway. I suppose the same could be said for Charlie and Jackson as well, but it made me uncomfortable that Beam and Howie generally doubted my loyalty still. I wondered if I would ever have Prophet's complete trust, or if I honestly wanted it. Strangely enough, I was simultaneously a little happy that nobody else was in my old home. Surely I did not long for that torturous time of my immobility, raging with an unquenchable thirst for vengeance against my father, yet bound by the lack of diatomic nitrogen. But something about this cell made me comfortable. Perhaps it was because then and there everything was so simple. I knew what I wanted and needed. I knew what it would take to get it. It was a singular motivator, a singular course of action, like a straight, crisp line. Everything was now so vague, confusing, and blurry.
This is row 1. This row of cells is reserved for the big dog, Sid. If we were to put someone in your old lockup, it'd have to be someone as tough as you. Otherwise, it's a waste of resources. And speaking of wastes of resources, want to get to the guy I called you down here to discuss?
Tyler Foon. Every time I saw this man, he looked closer and closer to a corpse. But even in his deteriorated, brink of dehydration state, he managed to make his way over to the glass and press his bare buttocks against it, laughing maniacally all the while. He is a disgusting person.
You said it, bud. And hey, you don't know the half of it. Let me fill you in on just how disgusting he truly is. You ever heard Foon's backstory?
I shook my head.
He married a woman with a 5-year-old little girl about 2 years ago. And a few weeks later, he heard a rumor that his wife was sleeping around with her old husband, caught them in the act. So he went ahead and shot the ex-husband. Then he strangled the wife for a bit while the little girl watched. Then he shot her too, the kid. This is all what they arrested him for, mind you. Rumor has it, it wasn't his first murder. And when he manifested in prison, he waited for a rainy day to break out and put on a fucking ruckus. Shot up the yard, injured 16 other inmates and 30 guards on the way, and they say he didn't have to do any of it. When he was done, he just jetted out over the fence, always had a clear shot to the exit. Instead, he just stood there, laughing, pummeling them with jets of water that yanked the skin right off their bones. He was laughing about it.
Why are you telling me this upsetting story, Murphy?
He's evil, Cidney. No bones about it, good old-fashioned evil. Sick in the head, deranged as they come, doesn't give a damn about anything but himself.
You wish for me to kill him? Murphy gave me a stern, serious look and nodded his head once. But Murphy, he is contained here and on Howie's orders. And despite the heinous life that he has led, I am a murderer as well. What right do I have to judge him for his evil?
This is different, Sid. Foon murdered people for fun, because he could. Random. You do it with a purpose. Equalizing people has a higher goal. Whether or not that goal is justified, hell, that's a different discussion, and I'll give you it's complicated too, but this particular guy should be one of the easy ones, you know? Equalizing dangerous good people is tough. Equalizing less dangerous bad people is a little easier. Tyler Foon is as dangerous as there is and rotten to the core. Remember what he did to Vasquez? He's exactly the sort of guy we created Bean to get.
Your distinctions of good and bad are not relevant to me, Murphy. I am not Jackson, and I am not you. You call it complicated, but I have perfect clarity on the matter. I equalize because Howie instructs me to. If Howie has declared Tyler Foon should not be equalized, I am in no position to ignore that declaration. Besides, if Bean's goal is to protect the general public from dangerous anomalies, surely they are protected from him sitting in this cell.
But that's just it, Sid. He's not gonna stay in there forever. Prophet thinks that fate wanted him to keep Foon alive for some specific purpose. Prophet thinks that one day, Tyler Foon will be a member of Ava.
I blinked at the lunatic behind the glass 3 times before I spoke again. This is not possible. If this were the case, why has he not already been instated as a member? Surely we have demonstrated he is containable and powerful. Why is he not released if one day he should be?
Howie hasn't put him on the team yet because he knows if he did it now, he'd just ignore orders and try to kill people. Then you 3 would have to put him back in here anyway. He's waiting for the torture to set in. He's waiting to break him down. Howie needs Foon to be as afraid of him as Charlie and Jackson are before he can let him loose to join.
And at this point, when Foon is obedient, he will be a great asset. Oh, why do you still object to his release?
Come on, think about it. This guy? Imagine him on a bus with Teak, just the 2 of them alone together. All the turmoil Jackson faces already with his coerced involvement in Bean's process, all the moral guilt. Imagine how he'd be if he hated you and Charlie. The only thing keeping him in one piece is his love for you guys. Even with that, it's twisting him up in knots a little bit. You may not care about ethical distinctions, but Jackson sure does. Imagine Jackson fighting alongside a deranged, murdering psychopath like Foon, a guy that legitimately enjoys killing people, a guy that killed a 5-year-old girl. instead of you two tormented souls. It'd eat him alive, Sid. Who knows what he'd do? And Charlie? Have you seen the way this asshole looks at Charlie? Can you imagine the sick shit he's capable of?
Charlie can take care of herself.
Yeah, but why should she have to? Where's she at? What if just one time she can't? She ungroups something too big or flurries too long, gets out of whack and can't get away from him, and then what does he do? What does the violent child murderer do? Even if he is scared of Howie, that happens one time, just once. Sid.
Stop. Merely the thought of Murphy's implications made me want to kill Tyler Foon. I could envision him tormenting Jackson, rubbing his nose in a particularly difficult equalization, driving him mad, or even forcing him to do it himself, and if he ever laid a single finger on Charlie, locking him back up, even equalizing him for it, would not undo the things he could potentially do to my friends. Did I trust that the eventual fear he would develop for Howie would ever be enough to restrain him from these things? Worse yet, would Prophet even care if they happened? It did not matter to Prophet if we got along. We were pawns in his plans, just like my father. If Tyler followed Howie's rules, what he did in the meantime would be of no consequence, even if he destroyed my family. I would do anything to ensure they were all right. A crisp, straight notion in a world so vague, confusing, and blurry, one perhaps worthy enough to be everything. You are right. We cannot allow him to join Ava, but why must I be the one to defy Prophet and kill him?
Because I do it, but I can't. This whole failsafe business is as much a curse as it was a blessing. Think about it. Anything I did to him, Howie would probably just failsafe him right back out of it. But look, Cidney.
He paused to rustle his mustache, looked me square in the face, the way Murphy always did when he said something heavy.
I don't know a damn thing about how it all works, but I assume it requires some amount of a body to be left. If you K-packed the motherfucker all over the place, he'd dissolve away, and Howie would have no body to use to recover him.
Then it must be me that does it. I articulated the conclusion as I redirected my sights on Tyler. But Murphy, what will Howie do when he finds out I was unforecasted and thus have no protection therein? If he saw fit to do so, Prophet might equalize me for this. Murphy rubbed his mustache again.
Well, shit. I hadn't really considered that part of the plan, to be honest. I guess I just assumed he'd keep you around because you've been so helpful already.
It is all right. I will die at Prophet's hands if it means I can save my friends from the tortured existence of working with Tyler Foon. Open the cell, please.
Easy, buddy.
He patted my shoulder and chuckled.
I will think of something to get this done without you dying from it. I'm glad we see eye to eye for now. It's not like it has to happen today. Just give me a chance to come up with
Murphy,
some...
do you hear that?
Hear what?
That sound. There is a strange sound. You are old, so your hearing is likely deteriorated. Listen carefully. Murphy scoffed at my reminder of his age, but nonetheless craned his ear to listen. It was a high-pitched hum that seemed to be coming from below us. I could faintly feel the ground shaking beneath our feet, first very slightly, as if not at all. My instincts told me it was an earthquake, but this notion was peculiar. The capital was not near any fault lines. The trembling grew stronger and stronger. The noise grew in volume. Soon it was unbearable to hear, and the floor of the dungeon trembled mightily. We both covered our ears, but Murphy shouted over the sound.
What the hell is going on?
I do not know, Murphy. Stay behind me no matter what happens. Better yet, get to the elevator.
Like hell, I ain't going nowhere.
He withdrew his gun from the holster on his belt. I was just about to comment on how frivolous this firearm would be in a fight against an earthquake, but at that moment a hole emerged in the wall of the dungeon. Right across from Foon's cell. It was almost perfectly circular, and from it spouted a deluge of water. Then came more, several dozen holes all along the wall across from the lockups, all providing their own additional flow. As the dungeon rapidly began to flood, I turned my gaze toward Tyler Foon, grinning fiendishly and rubbing his hands together. Murphy.
Yeah, I'm going.
He turned and ran down the hall as the water level climbed from ankle deep to calf deep. I charged after him, scooped him up, tucked him under my arm, as I had seen football players do on television. He was disgruntled, but I was sufficiently faster, and we would deal with his frustration after I had assured we did not drown, or worse. That is when the humming sound that had preempted the earthquake and the holes, changed frequency to a higher pitch. I pressed onward without looking back. Still 100 yards away from the door, the water was waist high when the glass wall of Foon's lockup shattered. He stepped into the hallway slowly and dramatically, and I turned to face him, setting Murphy down behind me. Stay behind me, Murphy. Continue to the elevator. Hurry. Get Jackson and Charlie down here.
I've been waiting a mighty long time to see you again, mate.
Tyler sneered at me from down the hall, still without having absorbed an iota of water, as indicated by the pale hue of his skin.
Last time I got out, you spoiled all my fun.
I am sorry, but I do not partake in witty combat banter, I civilly explained, and began charging toward him. But the water was so high it impeded my momentum. This was further accomplished by the distraction of Murphy behind me, gasping for breath, shaking and pedaling toward the elevator. It was a merciful moment, and only for that moment, when Tyler Foon decided finally to take some in. In an instant, the water level in the dungeon dropped from my chin to my ankles, and Tyler Foon's body became a translucent deep blue.
Thirsty?
He mused, then blasted me with a double-armed jet. I lifted both of my hands in front of my face, pressing back against the force of his blast. Even for all my strength, my unbreakable bones and impervious skin, it felt as though it was too much to bear. The pain was excruciating, and the water drove me backwards, my boots skidding across the damp floor of the dungeon as Murphy coughed and tried to catch his breath. I tried to step forward to regain positioning on Foon, but the floor was like a treadmill, a slippery current of water driving toward him as he continuously absorbed it. I lost my footing. The jet I was pressing against sailed over my head as I fell to my back. Foon laughed like a madman. Then he too noticed Murphy on the ground, struggling to get water out of his lungs. He redirected the blast toward him, and I was instantly reminded of Lindsay Flair and Jackson. I would not let it happen twice. No! I growled, lunging to the side and taking the blast right in my chest. My breath became short and quick. It stung like the worst pain I had ever felt, and again I could feel myself being pressed backwards as I stumbled to my knees. But if I moved, he would hit Murphy still down on the ground, and Murphy would not survive it the way I was. I again lifted my hands, pushing the water away from me, giving me a chance to take a few full breaths, and Murphy a chance to get to his feet. He sprinted toward the elevator, but slipped over the slick surface of rushing water. I turned my head for only a moment to make sure he was not injured on the fall. He was motionless on the floor, probably hit his head. I knew I had to deal with Tyler before I could help Murph, but when I looked back, Foon hit me right in the mouth with his redirected jet of water. I fell to the ground, and he followed me with his rapid aquatic blast. The water was tearing into my throat, into my lungs, around and out again like a coffee cup under the faucet. I was drowning. I was dying. My lungs were on fire, and Murphy was still unmoving. He would not make it to the door before I died. Foon would surely kill us both. I wondered if we would be worthy of Prophet's failsafe. But to my extreme relief, the doors suddenly flung off of the elevator, soared down the hallway, and slammed into the side of Tyler's face. It was enough only to distract him momentarily, diverting his blast away from me as I sputtered and coughed and vomited water. Jackson flew out of the elevator and darted down the hall. He beat Foon with the brass double doors, alternating one then the other, not giving him a chance to regain his balance or fire another shot. Then Charlie grouped in. She began to hover around Tyler, ungrouped like a swarm of bees, and he roared in frustration at her barrage of attacks, alternating with strikes from Jackson's weapons. Occasionally, within the bustle, I could make out a fist, a foot, a gun, beating him and moving on before I was certain he was there at all, but mostly, it seemed like a cloud, pestering him as he flung aquatic blasts into the ceiling and around the hall. Jackson rushed back and halted beside me, helping me to my feet. I almost stumbled again on the wet floor, but He was hovering next to me and propped me in place.
You okay?
I am fine. You have saved my life.
Anytime, buddy. Got one punch left in you?
I smirked. I will always have one more. And he hoisted me into the air and flung me at the howling mayhem that was Charlie's relentless harassment of Foon. I reared back to deliver one firm fist into the center of his face, and just before I did so, Charlie grouped completely assembled, standing on his shoulders. He looked up at her and she bent over, grabbing his hair and tipping his head down to receive my punch.
Fuck you.
She said a second before impact. She ungrouped at the last possible instant as I knocked him all the way down the long corridor into the farthest wall. It crumbled with the collision.
Nice hit, Big Purple. You good?
I am fine, I again wheezed. But Murphy is not well. We must help him and reorganize.
Agreed. Even with the three of us, we can't beat him with a basically constant supply of water however the hell he got in here. He's only gonna absorb any blows we deliver, and eventually he'll land a lucky hit. Let's retreat while he's down, lock down the dungeon. Jackson, take Murph and Sid and lift the elevator back up to the ground floor, you understand?
Already there.
Jackson called back from the elevator with Murphy inside.
Waiting on you, Sid.
Perhaps a lift? He carried me the several yards down the hall into the elevator. I was still unaccustomed to the sensation of flying, but for now I did not object. Foon would find his feet soon enough, and it was a fight I was eager to fall back from. Once I was inside with an unconscious Murphy and Jackson, he flew into the ceiling, pressing the elevator through the mile-deep shaft leading from the dungeon back up to the ground floor. Charlie met us at the doorway a minute or so later.
He won't come up here when the water's not flowing, but he can still escape. Through the holes that it all came spewing out of, they gotta lead somewhere, so we're gonna have to go get him once he eventually resurfaces and starts murdering people. As long as we keep him from the ocean, we can stall him out. I don't care how much he's absorbed. Started a dungeon shutdown too, moving all the blocks containing anomalies to a deeper level so he can't find any new friends. How's Murphy?
He is not entirely well. I cradled him out cold in my arms. I think he has bumped his head, but he is alive.
You saved his life, Cidney.
And you have saved mine. Both of you, I cannot thank you enough. They immediately disregarded my appreciation, but I took it as more of an indicator of the gravity of the situation than intentional disinterest. Jackson refocused our discussion.
Cidney, what the hell happened down there? Dale says 1 minute you and Murph were just talking, the next minute the whole dungeon was shaking and water started coming out of the walls?
Oh, I am pleased to hear that Dale has recommitted himself to diligent work. And he has provided an accurate description of the past few moments' events. The only detail that Dale has left out is the sound. There was a strange high-pitched noise that accompanied the holes. It was followed by a similar noise of a different frequency, and that shattered the glass.
It was a noise. Like when an opera singer breaks a wine glass, right? Resonance?
I believe so.
Damn it. Damn it!
Jackson turned around and slammed his fist into the wall of the HQ lobby. It was thick concrete, but he dented it nonetheless. I deduced the punch was amplified with telekinesis. I could confirm this suspicion later.
Jackson, what the hell is your problem?
It's Fly again. The resonance gun. He showed it to me the day I let him go. He's probably just perfected it now. Believe it or not, it's an adaptation of the collapse device. It's Fly. I'm sure of it. He let Foon out.
Okay, that kind of explains a lot, actually. Like why I couldn't find him no matter how intensely I scanned the capital. He was literally underground, messing with city sanitation pipelines, redirecting the water secretly so he could let Foon out of prison. It doesn't explain how we knew about Foon in the first place, or why the hell he'd choose to team up with him. Didn't you say he was all do-gooder, truth and justice, right versus wrong?
It is possible that he learned about Foon during the last attack he orchestrated against HQ. Perhaps when my brother managed to infiltrate his computer systems, he was slightly more liberal with his file sharing than he intended or realized. Everything from that attack was bait to get us to demonstrate our secrets and abilities. All he wanted was information, who is to say he did not gather more than anyone had noticed. As for why he released Tyler, by the same logic, his data likely led to the obvious deduction that his meager power was no match for the three of us combined. So he compromised his values to tackle the greater evil, at least from his jaded perspective. This is not the first time he has done that.
Right. He didn't release Foon because of some injustice in our system that was keeping him locked up. Fly released him because Foon is a killer. He wants him to kill us. Foon's not a partner, he's a weapon. Supply him with water and he's invincible. More water and he can go toe-to-toe with any of us, probably in pairs. Fly thinks he can control him, direct him to get the three of us out of the way. That'll leave HQ open to his attacks. Meanwhile, he shuts off the water and Foon goes back to regular dude.
Except he can't just shut off the water. Once he stops giving it to Foon, he'll just blow Fly out of the sky with whatever he's got in reserves, run to a bathroom to stock up, then maybe hit the beach, take up the whole ocean, and Tanaka the fuck out of everybody in sight just because he's a twisted bastard who gets off on killing people. At that point, not even we can stop him. Fly can't control him. He's just carelessly dropping nukes again. He has no idea what he's meddling with.
I don't think that's such a hard concept to believe, Charlie. For a genius, Fly's kind of demonstrated he's also an idiot. I could see him biting off more than he could chew to fulfill his needs.
So this is like a save the world fight, then. No propaganda, no fear tactics, no Howie bullshit.
I mean, I guess it's basically my fault that both of them are still alive in the first place.
No, shut up. You're ruining it. Don't do that. We are legitimately stopping the Fly from accidentally letting Typhoon take over the world. We're fighting to save the world.
The three of us, standing in our circle in the main lobby of Beam headquarters, drenched to the bone from our tussle moments ago, shared a dryly humorous smile. It had been a very long time since any of us considered ourselves to actually be saviors of mankind if we ever had it all. The fact that the upcoming battle promised to be demonstrative of such so directly as this, in spite of all of our typical egocentricity and past transgressions, was reason enough to smirk. Murphy will not be much help in this endeavor of global defense. I shook his still subdued body, cradled in my arms up and down a bit. Charlie giggled. Jackson looked displeased at my treatment of our comatose superior. Can we run a field operation this complex and unpredictable without him on point?
Probably not, but get a med team down here to make sure he's all right. Meanwhile, Jackson, go get your girlfriend. Tell her she's Murphy now.
He cocked an eyebrow.
On whose authority?
Mine. Ava's my department. We only report to Murph because we're subheaded under equalizations. He's not going to make any decisions right now, so I'll do it. I trust Maria more than any of the proper equalizers, plus she's more qualified. Hence, she's my point guard. Hell, get Phil in here too. Tell him to keep a lookout for more tanks and missiles heading for HQ, just in case Fly thinks we're too distracted to protect home base. Not to mention we may need a tech consult if the Fly chooses to join us in battle.
Huh, the whole gang, huh?
Sure thing. Wouldn't want to deprive anybody of a chance to save the world.
Again, we were forced to smile.
Thank you for listening to The Beam Chronicles, a fiction podcast written and produced by me, MJ Dooney. First, the stuff I say every time. A 5-star review would make my whole day. Check me out on social media, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube, even though it's pretty barren right now. And email me if you want to chat, beamchronicles@gmail.com. All music and sound effects were sourced from the Epidemic Sound Library. Special thanks to Sergio Duarte for creating the cover art for this podcast. You can find him on Instagram. And speaking of Instagram, if you are an artistic sort of person who has been listening to this story and you might be interested in doing some paid artwork for me, please reach out ASAP on email or a private message on Insta or Twitter. As I'm reaching the end of this first book, I want to dedicate more effort and time to posting stuff on social media, creating a presence and buzz around this project. I can't really do that super well without something pretty for people to look at, and I can't draw for shit. I don't have a lot of money, but I figure if I have someone out there who's listening to the story and they have interest, I'd much rather see their vision than just pay a random stranger. Anyway, thanks again for listening. Just 5 episodes left in this book, and I will see you next time.